Hi everyone, meteorologist Ed Valley here, taking a look at South America, and we're taking a look here. Rainfall last 3 days across Argentina, and yes, we have seen a temporary reprieve from the drier weather. This is mostly from Thursday night through Sunday morning across Argentina. A decent coverage of a quarter to maybe an inch and a half of rainfall, and again, it's something, but again, perspective is always important here. In the grand scheme, it's still on the dry side. So we're going to talk more about this here in just a minute. If you look here at the forecast, or excuse me, the observed rainfall going back 7 days, you'll notice that a little bit more fell earlier in the week, but most of this really was centered on the last couple days. So moving up into Brazil, you'll notice here, similar story, drier south, wetter to the north, a few spotty storms in parts of southern Brazil, but again, you'll notice most of that heavier stuff up north. And if you look at the last 7 days, you'll see that same exact theme. Not a lot in central and southern Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, and Rio Grande do Sul, just not a lot of moisture. Okay, and a lot of that is further up in Mato Grosso, Goiás, and far northern Mato Grosso do Sul. Okay, so let's look at the last 30 days of precip, and the theme here has been variability in Brazil. I would argue this is a little too dry compared to what actually is happening up in central Brazil. But you notice down in Argentina, you'd look at this snapshot and you'd say, well, shoot, this isn't bad. Well, we need to look closer because look at the last 15 days. Hasn't been much. We got a little bit of that again over the weekend that helped. But look at where the rain really was centered. It was centered at the 15-day period ending on the 1st. So the back half of January was wetter in Argentina, no doubt about it. But not a lot of moisture here in the last 15 days, and then you couple that with what's happening here now and what's happening in the week ahead. It's not welcome news, and I have some data from the 9th of February here, and that was telling us here that the corn got planted in 2 phases in Argentina. The first phase was already filling grain, 40%, and 12% was already mature. And then the second flank, 49% was pollinating. So obviously this dry weather, not ideal for pollinating corn. And then up in parts of Brazil now, looking at soybeans specifically, 60% of Mato Grosso's soybeans are harvested now. Okay. You move southward, that number drops a little bit because things were obviously planted later. Only about 15% harvested now in Paraná. And as we press forward, this will shoot up here in the coming days. A lot of dry weather to help harvest those soybeans in southern areas. However, on the safrinha side of things, obviously we need moisture to plant, right? 50% or 57% of Mato Grosso's corn is now planted, safrinha corn, and only 19 is down in parts of Paraná. So further south, obviously we're lagging behind, but it again puts the pressure on moisture to help plant this safrinha crop down south. Okay, so that's going to be the most important thing moving forward, along with, of course, the pollinating corn that's still down in Argentina and some of those soybeans as well moving forward. We notice we're still in La Nina. We're still in La Nina. Over time, it's going to slowly weaken as we head into the summer. How quickly? Remains to be seen. Our models here go out to July. Some of our models still have a similar La Nina to what we're dealing with now, whereas others catapult this warmer into an El Nino-like state. I don't think that's likely. I think a slowly dwindling La Nina makes sense here, but it's going to take some time, no doubt about it, and that's going to impact how the weather behaves in the spring for South America. So you notice the cool blue waters, that's our La Nina, still there. Last 7 days of change, not much change. You see that? So we're not seeing this rapidly trend warmer or anything like that towards El Nino. It's pretty steady. And as we press forward here, there's actually, I'm going to show you this first. The MJO is going to drive our weather pattern. So today is here. We're in phase 3, right? Over time, by the 20th, we're in phase 4, and eventually we'll be in phase 5 after about the 24th. Okay, so remember that 20th time frame, because look what precipitation should do in phase 3, which is what we're in now. Drier. Perfect. Great. Phase 4, though, gets wetter. You see that, southern Brazil and Argentina? That is interesting and something we've been eyeing for a while. But you notice the pattern through this week is pretty darn dry. I'm going to press through some of these models, and you'll notice not a lot of moisture through about the 20th. However, what happens on the 20th? You start seeing more clusters of storms developing. Again, perspective always needed. No precip to scattered precip. That's the jump here. We're not going from dry to super wet. That's not happening at this point. However, when you look at the 10-day numbers, you'll notice that, again, a lot of this stuff in Argentina is pretty paltry as it is, but that comes after the 20th as that phase 4 gets going. And then the same thing with the GFS. So we go back to the 19th, not a lot happening, and then watch after the 20th. Storm clusters start to develop, and again, they're scattered, but the GFS operational is actually picking up some decent moisture in parts of southern and western Argentina, as well as locally in parts of northern areas too. So I think that's a lot to do with that MJO progression here, okay? Now, as we get into phase 5, which is coming into March, notice it's a fairly variable look, favoring southwestern Argentina for some moisture and then southern Brazil for some moisture, right? Well, that's kind of what we used in making our 16 to 30 day here on Friday, and now we have the luxury of using the data that came in over the weekend. And you notice the forecast here in Brazil is much closer to normal, or even slightly above normal, and you see it there on the GFS as well, and the Canadian. So I believe this Paraná, southern Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraguay area is likely going to trend a little wetter here as we head into the 10 to 15 day. That's the last 5 days of March. And as we move down to Argentina during that time, the GFS is a little bit wetter than everything else. The Canadian has moisture to the south and to the north. The European has moisture to the north and some to the south. But it's, again, that's a dry look in Argentina. And obviously with the maturing corn, as we just talked about, that's an important factor. And, it is going to be warmer this week as well. Looking at the 5 to 10 day here moving forward, you see some warmth here. But notice by the time we get towards the 5 to 10 day, the cooler weather is starting to come back. So I think the heat stress here is not going to be anything like it was in January. But it is, again, another pessimistic part of this forecast. So even if we are going to trend things better, we still got to get through this drier and warmer period coming up, which obviously for corn is really important. And then moving forward, you see here, this is our 16 to 30. We kind of took that phase 4 idea and what the models were kind of hinting at. Wetter south and west Argentina, and then wetter in southern Brazil, drier for parts of east central Argentina. So that's the way we're heading here. This was an 8-minute video, so apologies on the longer length. If you have questions, let us know. We'll be back here shortly tomorrow with more information.